Aleph. We are on 42A3. The last thing the Mishnah stated that a child that knows how to wave his lulav is obligated in the mitzvah of lulav. That's the time that a parent has an obligation to train his son in the mitzvah of lulav. You able to send to the group, Adam, that we're on? Very good. We just got here on good. Now, so that's what the Mishnah stated. The Mishnah stated that mitzvah, there's a mitzvah to train one's child to do the mitzvah of lulav, just like there's a mitzvah to train children in all mitzvot. And different mitzvot, there seems to be different ages depending on the situation of the mitzvah that we're referring to. So that's the first thing it says in the Mishnah. The Mishnah focuses on lulav, waving a lulav. So if we look at the Shulchan Aruch in Siman, morning, Mr. Morning, good to see you. Morning. If you look at the Shulchan Aruch and Siman Tov Reish Nun Zayin, Tov Reish Nun Zayin, it says, take a look. Tov Reish Nun Zayin. There's the one sif, a katan who knows how to wave his lulav properly, says Shulchan Aruch puts in a nice word, kedino. I mean, waving the lulav is not called waving. I have to know how to do it right. The right directions. I presume that's what he means, kedino. Aviv chayev luknos lulav tilachancho b'mitzvos. Father is obligated to buy him a lulav to train him in mitzvot. So the language of the Mishnah was the Mishnah says that the father has a chayev b'lulav. It doesn't say he has to buy him a lulav. And even over here, we're going to find in the bright it doesn't say the idea that the father has to buy him a lulav. And here it says that the father liknos lo lulav kedei lechancho b'mitzvos. In order to train him how to do the mitzvah. So Chafetz Chaim says, he doesn't know how to wave, even if he's already 6 years old, not obligated to train him. And he says from the Pri Megadim, chinuch is not the same in all mitzvot. Different mitzvot at different ages. That's opinion of Pri Megadim. In the Mishpah of Zahav. But he says in the Ishel Avram, he writes the opposite. And Bikuri Yaakov, he's lenient. He's lenient. It would seem like the Bikuri Yaakov would hold that if you're 6 years old, and it sounds like there are those opinions that say that if you're 6, he has to be trained in the mitzvah, whether he knows how to wave or not. And the chidush is that even if you're less than 6, if you know how to wave, you already have to start training him in the lulav. Others say no, that if you're 6 years old and you don't know how to wave, you don't have the mitzvah. Now, in the mitzvah of chinuch, it's not only the Chafetz Chaim says in the mitzvah d'oraita, the first day, which is d'oraita for the father, even the rest of the week, which is the Rabbanan, also you have the mitzvah of chinuch. Now, it's interesting the language of the Shulchan Aruch that says that you have to buy him a lulav. And the Chafetz Chaim says, the Marshal says, you don't have to buy him a lulav. Technically, after the father was Yotzei, you go ahead and give it to his son to fulfill the mitzvah. Now, and some say that if the father is able to afford, then it's better that he should buy a lulav for the child, that a child will be able to be trained in the morning to wave the lulav properly during Hallel with the tzibur. So that would be better than just the child afterwards, just saying the bracha later and so on. Now, In the Bir Halacha, he says the Gemara does not. The Gemara says that the Gemara says the child that knows how to wave his chayv lulav does not would not seem to indicate that you have to go ahead and actually buy him a lulav. But you'll see the Gemara is going to emphasize when it comes to tefillin, buy your son a pair of tefillin. Okay, and also the Chafetz Chaim writes in the Bir Halacha that's pshita, that's obvious that all the dalad minim, all the 4 species should be kosher. Just like where gadal, you should have to be careful. The aravot are kosher that you buy for your child. Don't think, you know what, it's an arava, but it's missing the majority of its leaves. Or dasin is it. You have to make sure everything has to be done. The etrog, you go. A person says, I want to buy a chinuch set for my child. But the chinuch set has to be kosher. It doesn't. Maybe the chinuch set does not have to be the $100 etrog, but it has to be. If you're training the child, it has to be. Everything has to be kosher for the training of the child. And the way the Yalkut Yosef brings down in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, if the father's able to afford, he's obligated to buy a lulav for the child. And he says, now the question is, we mentioned before, if a child knows how to wave. So the question is, what does it mean, does he know how to wave? Does it mean, does he know how to wave in the proper directions, in the proper order? Or even if he doesn't know the proper, as long as he knows how to go back and forth, with the lulav, meaning he knows to go this way, like what's called waving, you go like that. So that's what the Yalkut Yosef says. It does not have to know the actual order, to the right, to the right, to the left, and all the ways, the order that it's done. As we know, there's different ways that Ashkenazim do it, which way the Sfardim do it. Right, oh, very good. A lot of those don't know how to do it right out. That's what you're saying. As long as he knows how to wave, to be molichul havi. Well, this way, you see this added this way and that way. That's good morning, Simon. That will be enough. Morning, that will be enough for him to be. He's at an age that he's obligated in the lulav. Now, and he says also clearly that the mitzvah lechanech the child, the lulav, is also b'chalamoed. The child comes to shul with the father on Yom Tov, right? Father comes to shul on Yom Tov, right? Let's say, right, Simon? But what about Chalamoed? Not necessarily the child is coming to shul. He might be sleeping late, the child. The father has a responsibility to train that boy, take that lulav, right, Adam? When the father comes home from shul. Before you, they'll say to the child, let's go, before you get moving on your day, I have as a parent, you have a responsibility to train your child. You should be taking the lulav every day of the holiday. Every day of the holiday, Chol Hamoed, the child is supposed to go ahead and shake the lulav. Now, so then he says, if the child does not have a lulav, so the father gives the child a lulav to use. And some say that it's enough that the child should wave the lulav after he says the bracha. He turns over the etrog, and then he waves the lulav. And you do not need that he should have it to wave during the psukim of Hallel. And some say that part of the training is to make sure that the child also will wave the lulav and etrog. He should wave it during the Hallel. So he says that therefore he says that maybe a father should hurry up to wave it and give it to the child, that he should also wave it during Hallel. And also, okay, so that's something interesting. Okay, now that's the halacha about training a child in the lulav. So now in the Gemara, Tanur Rabbanan, Simon, we are on 42a3 on the right side of the page. We just said a child that knows how to wave is chayav b'lulav. is obligated in the mitzvah of lulav. When the Gemara now with the Gemara on that piece is the brighter. See in the Gemara there's the two dots, katan edelanea, on the right side. So now the piece starts on the bottom of 42A3, the last line, then it continues. Now, the child knows how to wrap himself with a talit. So at that time, that he knows how to wrap himself with a talit, and some explain, as you know, the special way that we wrap ourselves with the talit. If they know how to do that, then that's the age that he's obligated to what? To put on chayav b'tzitzit. That's when the child is obligated in tzitzit. Today, they give maybe a tzitzit to a child when he's 3 years old, but usually that's not. I don't believe that's an age that the kid really knows how to wrap himself the way the way you wrap yourself with the talit above your head. Good morning. Yeah, Rabbi Shmuel, I don't know that the kids at that age are really. So what does it say in the Shulchan Aruch? When Yud Zayin Sif Gimel, let's see what it says in the Shulchan Aruch. It says, if a child knows how to rap, father has to buy him tzitzits to train him. Now, let's see what the Yalkut Yosef says about this training, about this talit that you have, this child. The way the Ramah says, one of the things is he knows how to hold the tzitzit during Kriyat Shema. That's one of the things that shows a sign of maturity. But if he doesn't know how to, now, a lot of kids 3 years old, they're not saying Kriyat, they're not saying the whole Kriyat Shema, right? So it doesn't seem that, according to that opinion, that a 3-year-old child is obligated in tzitzit, training that child. So the way in the Yalkut Yosef, Shulchan Aruch, he says 6 to 7. He says a child, he said that 6 or 7 years old, between 6 or 7, depends how sharp the child is. The sharp child 6, and not as sharp child 7. It is good and proper to train him to wear a talit katan. That's when he should wear a tzitzit the whole day. A talit katan the whole day, but it's such a mitzvah yikara v'chashuv l'ma'od. So there's such a special mitzvah. Tzitzit is equal to all the 613 mitzvot. It says aritem oto, iskartem et kol mitzvot Hashem. And he says it is also good to train them. They should wear a talit gadal at shachrit, even though they're wearing a talit katan, and to teach them to wrap in the tzitzit. And he says it's upon the teachers of the yeshivot to encourage the children, the students, or the leaders of that the students, once they reach the age of chinuch, to train them in this mitzvah. And you train the children, say a bracha on the talit. So it would seem so what he's talking about. So whatever that age is, good morning, that they know how to wrap themselves in the talit, and they have that mitzvah of chinuch. But again, wearing tzitzit, the whole day he talks about 6 or 7 years old. That's when he talks about. Even though, like I said, many of the kids are trying to do it. But again, even if they do it at 3, it's not really an obligation at that time. But obligation would, or what he says, it's good to train them already at 6 or 7 to wear the tzitzit, during the whole day. Okay, that's a little bit about the tzitzit. That's chayav l'satef b'tzitzit. Lishmo tfilav. If the child knows how to watch his tefillin, what does it mean? He knows not to go to the bathroom with the tefillin. He knows not to emit gases with his tefillin. So it's lishmo tfilav. Then aviv lokeach lo tefillin. The father is supposed to buy him tefillin. So what's the age? Now there's many different customs. When does a child stop putting on tefillin? Some put it on when he's 12 years old, a month before the bar mitzvah, a week before the bar mitzvah. There's all different customs when the person should start putting on tefillin. The Gemara says, morning Morris, the Gemara says that the obligation to start putting on tefillin is if he knows how to watch his tefillin. Rashi says to watch his tefillin, not to enter the bathroom. Right? Like others emphasize that he knows not to emit gases with the tefillin. So let's see what it says in the Shulchan Aruch. Lishma Tfilav, it's a Simin Lamed Zayin, Siv Gimel. It says the following regarding a katan, a child who knows how to watch his tefillin. The Shulchan Aruch says not to fall asleep with the tefillin, not to fall asleep with the tefillin, and not to emit gases with the tefillin. The father needs to buy him a pair of tefillin. Now, the Ashkenaz rabbi said, the Ramah says, some say that child is only if he's 13. But less than 13, some understand that the Gemara, when the Gemara says if he's able to watch himself, it's only if he's 13 years old. But if he's less than 13, if it's less than 13, you don't let him put on tefillin, even if he wants to, some say, because we're not confident that he knows how to watch his tefillin properly, that he's not going to emit gases. So there are those that say, what do you say? Right, so there's but the Ramah says, some say that katan is even when he's 13 years old. The 13-year-old boy is only allowed to put on tefillin if he's able to properly treat the tefillin properly. But less than 13, he can't even put on the tefillin. So that's a different opinion. And so according to this opinion, the only time a child can put on tefillin, the second opinion is the day of his bar mitzvah. When he becomes bar mitzvah, he cannot put on tefillin, according to the second opinion, a day before his bar mitzvah. But comes the Chafetz Chaim and says, now we have a custom, we put 2 or 3 months. He says, he brings from the book on from 2 or 3 months. I haven't seen that. I've seen more, maybe a month, maybe a week before. I think maybe a month I've seen more to see what the different customs are. 2 or 3 months before the time. Now we're going to take out the Yalkut Yosef in a second. And also, if you note, it says to buy him a pair of tefillin. So let's see. Right. So they asked the question, why it doesn't say buy by tefillin? Right. Right. It says buy by tefillin specifically. Now, obviously, you would say that maybe tefillin is something that it's 360. It's almost 300 days a year you have put on tefillin, and you're not always with someone near somebody with something to borrow, right? By tefillin, for a father to give the lulav, the tzitzit was probably, it doesn't have to say you already have the garment. Right. So what's probably tzitzit is tzitzit is going on your garment. Your garment that you wear, that's yours, you put on tzitzit. So most probably it's not like you have to go buy something special. He already has the garment. Here the question is buying maybe something, buying the tefillin. That's perhaps. But you bring up the point. It sounds like because they wore already 4-corner garments. That's what you say. Maybe perhaps that's one way we could approach it. So in Lamed Zayin, in Siman Lamed, right, that's what it would seem like. Lamed Zayin, he says, a child that reaches the age of chinuch, and he did not yet, he's not 13 years old yet. If he knows how to watch his body, not to emit gases, is a mitzvah on his father to train him in tefillin a year or two. This is how the Yalkut Yosef Shulchan Aruch says, a year or two before bar mitzvah, and that's the minhag by the Eidut HaMizrach, Be'eretz Yisrael, someone who knows how to watch his body properly. And there are those by the Ashkenazim that they have the custom that they train the child 2 or 3 months before the bar mitzvah. Especially, and the Sfaradim have 1 to 2 years. And that's see what the Sfaradim? Right. So it depends on the child. Meaning the child who's more on top of his game, the child who's sharper, was able to watch, is more mature, he could do 2 years before. Just like we find sometimes a chinuch 6 or 7 years old. So same thing for the tefillin, it's 12. Some say it's 12, and some say 11. They already, he's mature to watch his tefillin, not to mitgizes, control his body better. And he says, especially if the chas v'shalom, says if the child lost his father, he says they train him tefillin a month or 2 before the bar mitzvah if he knows how to watch his body, and that will be a very big ilin neshama if he lost his father or he lost his mother, because the child bram bezaka abba, a child is brings a great merit for their parents. Everything that the child does, mitzvah that the child does, brings ilin neshama. But with all of this, he says, just be careful. You see this bar mitzvah boy wearing tefillin, but he's not bar mitzvah yet. Make sure, don't count him in for the minyan. Be very careful, because it's a little, right, Morris? You think the guy's bar mitzvah, yeah? If you're running a small minyan. You have to. That's why you have to be. Right. If you see a young kid with tefillin on, you have no way. If he's 13 or 12, you have to ask him, are you bar mitzvah or not? If you want to, you have to ask him if you want to count them into the minyan. Now, when you train the child to put on tefillin, train him to say the bracha on the tefillin. You should train the child to say a bracha on Sfirat Omer. You're not afraid that maybe the child, Sfira is coming up soon, right? Pesach is coming up. We're not afraid that the child might forget to count one day. And he says, interesting, even a child forgot to count one day, you should train the child to continue counting with the bracha. But a child that became bar mitzvah during Sfira, says better. That's a different question. Whether he should continue with the bracha or not. He says better not to. That's a separate issue. A child, once he became bar mitzvah, we are talking about chinuch, talking about the rabbinic responsibility of training a child. But when the child becomes bar mitzvah, the first day he's obligated in the mitzvahs tefillah min Torah. Now, so the bottom line is what comes out. So we have different opinions exactly when is the appropriate time to train a child to put on tefillin. Okay. It seems like the Ashkenazim are more concerned that the kid might not respect the tefillin properly, so we shorten the window before bar mitzvah, and the Sfaradim seem to give a much longer window, and they're more confident that the child is going to be mature enough to watch himself properly with the tefillin. I'm not sure what the common custom in the Sephardi community today is, but like I said, I think there's a lot of Ashkenazim, I think, put on a month before. I got to double check that. Okay. No, it's in the Talmud, but they learn that we have to be an ish. I think it's we have to be at the age of a man. Good morning. You're only at the age of 13 when you reach that point. But the only thing is, 13 also he needs to have age plus maturity, that he has 2 years, puberty. That means if a child is 13 and did not have puberty, he's not really bar mitzvah, and therefore we are, in general, at least I can tell you about the Ashkenazim. A child who's 13 will not be motzi a person on a biblical mitzvah. Meaning kiddush Friday night, the night he becomes bar mitzvah. Or we wait. They wait a little bit. They wouldn't have the child. The child wants to be the chazan. He can be the chazan. He's not being motzi on a mitzvah min Torah when he's a chazan. But he could. But a mitzvah deraita, like going ahead and saying kiddush Friday night, the Shabbat bar mitzvah, he became bar mitzvah. We will not. We would tell him we will not give him that honor. He wants to say hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. That's the rabbinic mitzvah of saying a bracha. So technically, now usually you have the balabai. Usually, anyways, the father usually makes the bracha hamotzi. But if he's going to honor his son to say hamotzi, okay, you can honor your son. We're not. But a mitzvah min Torah, we don't. We stay away from him honoring him to be motzi. Of course, right? We'll train that child to do that mitzvah. So obviously, it's a beautiful idea of a rabbinic mitzvah of training a child, but you can't expect a child that poof on a dime, he knows what he's doing when he becomes bar mitzvah. You got to train him. Therefore, here's the Gemara talking about training. Now, Yodea l'daber. If a child, now also maybe something about buying, okay, Yodea l'daber. If a child knows how to speak, that's aviv lomdo Torah. The father teaches the son Torah. There's a mitzvah, v'shinantam levanecha. The mitzvah teach Torah to one's child. At what point does that mitzvah kick in? So this, to me, it seems to be an amazing halacha, that the obligation of a father to a child, to a son, is when the son starts to speak. There's already a teaching Torah. So what age the child starts speaking? 2 years old, 3 years old. What's called speaking? And you already have the obligation to teach your son Torah and Kriya Shema. The Gemara is going to identify what is this Torah? Is it all of Shas, like Adam is thinking very big, or is it, let's start small, like Torah Tziva Lana Moshe Morashek Yaakov. Now the Aruch HaShulchan says he understands that when it says when the child knows how to speak. Knows how to speak does not mean that he speaks a few words. Knows how to speak means that he reached an age that now he's conversation. He said, that or also conversation, or maybe means it's complete. He talks, meaning I presume he means nishlam diburo, that means it's complete. It's not like he can say full words. It's proper conversation. I think maybe also like what Simon is saying. And he writes it's about around 4 years old. So that maybe that's when there is this obligation of teaching the child this Torah Tziva Lana Moshe. Right, but the kid's 2 years old and he's starting to speak. According to the Aruch HaShulchan, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that everybody agrees to that because I'm wondering. Because I'm wondering about. If you look at the Rambam, let's take it to Rambam. Let me get the Rambam out. But I think there might be a language when the kid starts to speak. But again, how we're translating starting to speak. Let's see the Rambam in Hilchos Talmud Torah. Because I think there's an idea that from the first things that he says, let's see what he says. Torah Tziva Lana Moshe, Halacha Vav. When is the Rambam quoting the Rambam? When is the father obligated to teach his son Torah? When he begins to speak, you teach him Torah Tziva Lana Moshe. And Shema Yisrael, then the Rambam continues. And afterwards, you teach him Ma'at Psukim. You teach him small amounts of Psukim until he's 6 or 7, according to his health, abilities, and then you bring him to a Rebbe, a teacher, to teach him Torah. So instead you're homeschooling him until 6 or 7. Today, they send him to yeshiva even younger than 6 or 7. But the Rambam says you start off. So again, the question is, what does it mean that the first word that comes should be once he starts talking, you should teach him Torah Tziva Lana Moshe and Shema Yisrael, or does it mean like the Aruch HaShulchan's understanding when it's conversation or he's able to complete words? Now he knows how to talk. You know what I mean? Not that he just says a few words. He knows how to talk, which is about 4 years old. And again, also that could be also depending on the maturity of the child. Now, and what are the things that we teach him? You Aviv Lomdo Torah Ukriyashma. You teach him Torah Kriyashma. Torah Mahi. What's the Torah that you teach him? So the Gemara says, Amar Amnuna Torah Tziva Lana Moshe Morasha Kilat Yaakov. You teach the child the Torah was commanded to us by Moshe. Hashem told Moshe to tell us the Torah, tell us the commandments. And Morasha Kilat Yaakov. This is a legacy to give over to the next generation. It's the heritage of the Jewish people, which is an interesting pasuk. There are so many pasukim in the Torah that the Torah could choose from that we should go ahead and train a child. And yet the first pasuk you should train a child is Torah Tziva Lana Moshe. What is unique about this pasuk that this is the pasuk out of all the pasukim? Meaning you're going to teach him also the Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. You're going to teach the child emunah. Hear Israel, Hashem is our God, Hashem is one. But also we teach him the pasuk of Torah Tziva Lana Moshe. Why is this? Okay, he knows where he comes from. You know that the Torah was okay. So it's interesting. Number one, the idea of Torah Tziva Lana Moshe, that it's from Moshe is the one. There's a rabbi, there's a teacher, there's a Masorah. Moshe was the vehicle that Hashem, right. Torah Tziva Lana Moshe.
of the community.
Right, but he's again. Sav es bnei Yisrael. Right. So you're commanding the Jewish people. You know you have Moshe Rabbeinu. So that child now, the first thing is that the child is going to learn to know that there's a Moshe and to revere and to respect Moshe. That's what he's going to realize. Moshe is a big name. So the first he's going to hear about when he hears Torah, he hears it's the Torah Moshe. That's the first thing. But also the idea is Morasha Kilat Yaakov. The Torah is for you to pass on to the next generation. Morasha means not but more. Rabbi Feinstein, Rabbi Feinstein explains more than inheritance. More than inheritance. Morasha is to give over. You something you go ahead and you give over to inherit to the next generation. So the idea of Torah was given to us, but it's a morasha. We have responsibility to make sure that the next generation. Right. Right. So maybe this could serve. This could right inheritance. You got it's yours. Right. So you might, and maybe that idea is powerful for the father to recognize his responsibility of giving over to the child, and to reckon that no, he has this is his morasha. He has the responsibility to give it over, but also to recognize he needs to train his child in such a fashion that his child should give it over to the next generation. That it's a morasha. You just could. We have responsibility to learn the Torah, to follow the Torah, and give it over to the next generation. So maybe that's the response, the awesome responsibility that we have, and that's what perhaps the idea of Morasha Kilat Yaakov. And also the idea of Morasha Kihilat Yaakov, the idea that you're part of a Kihila, you're part of a Jewish people, a bigger people. You're not an individual only. You're part of a Kihila. It's responsibility of the whole community. Now, that's what that's the Torah. Kriya Shema Mahi. What is the Kriya Shema? What is the responsibility? Kriya Shema, you have to train the child. Pasuk Rishon. The Pasuk Rishon, that's Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. That's the responsibility. You have to go ahead and train the child. Now, let's see what any commentary on this point. You see, the question is, what about, I presume you teach him the first pasuk, the same way the Rambam says, you train the child, Torah Sivalona Moshe, and then you train him other psukim. I would say the same thing when it comes to the Kriya Shema. You first train him in the first pasuk of the Kriya Shema, and then you would go ahead and you would train him the other rest of the Kriya Shema. At a certain point, see, the question is, what point you have to train the child to say all the three parshas of Kriya Shema? It's here when it comes. Some say 6, some say 7. Would we say? But in halacha, there's a whole discussion about if Kriya Shema has a unique time factor, which is like you have to do it by 3 hours into the day of the Kriya Shema or at night. So there might be a later time. Because it's so specific and so window-oriented, the obligation to train that child to say the Kriya Shema might be only at a later time, when he's old enough to be on top of that game of that specific time period. In contrast to Tefillin, which is a mitzvah that can be performed any time of the day. Of course, you want it in the morning, but contrast to Lulav, because that's any time of the day. So maybe we'll see more details about the Kriya Shema tomorrow. I want to wish everyone a beautiful day and Chodesh Tov, everybody.